Hey, everybody. How are you? Happy Friday. You made it to the end of another week. Welcome to the Speakeasy. I'm Jeff Belanger. Think of me as your barkeeper, but also your friend. And you made it a week. You made it. Hopefully, you're a little bit older, a little bit wiser, getting just a little bit better. And if you're watching right now, please, oh, please share. Go ahead and share this. Start a watch party with your friends so they can join us here in the Speakeasy as well, because we don't card anyone and there's never a cover. We're just kind of hanging out. So I've noticed a lot more people are moving around out there these days. I myself am also a little bit guilty of that, like going to stores and stuff and buying things that are long overdue, doing home improvement projects. I've also kind of noticed the mood feels a little bit nasty and bitter even, and I know that we keep a lot of that bitterness and ugliness inside of us a lot. And I heard an analogy that we're all like teacups or coffee cups, if you prefer. And when things are steady, it's fine because we keep it all contained. But if we get bumped, some of that bitterness spills out. And there's a lot of teacups getting bumped right now, and people are getting pretty nasty out there. And we got to try harder, huh? We got to calm down, take a deep breath, because all that ugliness is going to draw in a darker element. Hopefully, it's not enough to make you want to kill a bunch of people. Am I right? So anyway, it's Friday, and what could be more fun than talking about serial killers, And why not focus on America's most prolific serial killer, H.H. Holmes? And if we're going to do that, why not bring it up with one of his direct descendants, with the author of the book BLOODSTAINS, the guy from American Ripper on History Channel. Please welcome Jeff Mudgett.
Hey, Jeff, how are you? And I tell you what, I've been looking forward to this all week. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on and joining us. You're in Las Vegas, right?
Las Vegas, where the heat is, and I can step out my front door and see the entire strip on my view. And at night, it lights up like a 4th of July party, and you've got all the parties going on down there still.
Well, I'm glad that the city keeps on rocking. What are you drinking tonight? Most important question of the entire evening.
Well, I got to tell you, you mixed this golden margarita for me. It's excellent. Maybe the best I've ever had.
Well, I appreciate that. Speaking of golden, I'm doing a Narragansett. Cheers. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Cheers.
Yeah. What are you folks drinking? Where are you from? Make your comments and we'll put them up. Yes. Oh, hey, you only have one name to remember tonight, right, Brenda? Jeff and Jeff. Very easy. All right. So we were talking.
I can even do that one.
Yeah, we can even figure that out. So we were talking just before we went live how long we've known each other. Your book came out, BLOODSTAINS, 11 years ago. So we've known each other at least that long, right?
Oh yeah. And I was trying to recall when you and I were playing around in Chicago with Ursula.
Yes, Chicago, which is a big part of the story. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, but I just want to start to sort of set this whole thing up. Tell us about this guy. There he is, H.H. Holmes, who was not born H.H. Holmes. He was born Herman Webster Mudgett, which looks a lot like your last name.
He was my great grandfather. I found out when I was about 40 years old.
Okay.
And my grandfather decided to tell the family the secret that he'd kept even from my grandmother. And so imagine being 40 years old. I was a practicing trial lawyer in California, and whammo, I'm the descendant of perhaps the most evil man in American history.
But let's just talk about him for a second. Let's set him up. This is a guy born in New Hampshire, another New Englander, right? 1861, Gilmanton. And but it's really in Chicago where he makes a name for himself, correct?
Well, he pretty much moved all over, but Chicago was where he built the murder castle in preparation for the World's Fair in 1893.
Right. And there it is. That's the murder castle as it looked back then. And he would lure people in and kill them, right? I mean, but he sought out specific victims, right? He was looking for people that wouldn't be missed.
Well, there's some people looking at this aspect of the story right now, Jeff, but the murder castle was about 2 miles within walking distance of the fair,
right?
Which had 27 million visitors. So put on your thinking cap and imagine this debonair con man down handing out cards to his hotel to the young visitors who had nowhere to sleep that night, who came for the day and night of their life, and they needed a place to sleep.
And that would be that. Once they check in, that's like
it's all over. It's all over. And the when we did American Ripper, Amaryllis, my co-host, loved the gal. She and one of the ex-Chicago detectives, there she is. She's quite cute, isn't she? And
totally.
They went and researched the archives, and there were 500 missing tourists that the Chicago police never accounted for. That's why. So when I go on shows like yours and people want to argue about how many people he actually murdered, I throw up my hands and I say, pick whatever number you want. I have no idea.
But 27 at least, right?
Well, that was the number he threw out in the interview he gave after the conviction when he was in prison, when the Philadelphia Inquirer agreed to pay him a bunch of money for an interview.
Okay.
And he pretty much admitted that it was a joke, that number he threw out. And there's some were living of those 27. And that's why when I go on debates and, the serious historians want to argue about whether it was 5 or 9 or 13 or 27 or 200, Jeff, I try to stay away from that. But here you have probably the world's foremost expert in eliminating evidence of murder that ever lived, with a building made to reduce flesh, bones, blood, everything the police need to determine that a murder ever happened. Ugh. So I stay away from it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's a dark place to be sure. Now, tell me about the day you learned, hey, Mudgett, there's another Mudgett and you're related. I mean, what's that like to hear that? And this is not just like some run-of-the-mill criminal. Like this could be, we're talking like number one in American history.
Well, it was a shock. I can remember that dinner party when my grandfather decided that he'd heard enough. My grandmother was into ancestry. She was convinced that we were descendants of Robert E. Lee. She had spent a lot of money trying to prove that. That was before .com.
Yeah.
The professionals had come on her front door, knocked on the door and said, Mrs. Mudgett, that old saying about leaving sleeping dogs lie. This is one you should, and we need to just leave you alone with this, and you're not related to Robert E. Lee. And so she was.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, so it's quite a movie scene. And
yeah.
she was kind of getting hints and tips, and they didn't really want to come out and tell her. So that night she was revealing to the entire family. There was maybe 15 of us there. And my grandfather had finally had enough. He stood up, slammed his chair back against the wall. The picture crashed to the floor, and he said, "That name will never be mentioned in this house again. That is my grandfather, and I've been cursed my entire life because of it."
Cursed?
Yeah.
And what's the curse?
Well, that's actually a pretty good story. He was a good man, my grandfather. He was the boss of a Pacific Gas and Electric power plant in California, and he was never arrested for any crimes. But you could tell that he'd gone through his life, Jeff, with worrying about character flaws, wondering if he was going to be the next, probably. Who knows how his mind worked? I can tell you this: there are times when I've laid in bed at night and wondered about those things too. And
but you spent the first 40 years not knowing, right?
No, I had no idea.
So now that you know it, is there like a pre-knowing, post-knowing, like Jeff Mudgett, right? Are you a different person?
Yeah.
Do you think differently?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And what's that like? What was that first lying in bed back at age 40? You just found out and you're like, okay, let me ask you this. Can you think back to your earlier life where like, man, you just snapped at someone or something, and now you look at that through a different lens?
Imagine, Jeff, one day having someone explain why. They didn't explain it to you why, but they gave you a reason, a cause a piece of evidence that allowed you to say, okay, that's what that was about when I was 26 years old. And God, I'm glad I got a hold of that before something terrible happened. Those kind of thoughts.
But I mean, I've had those kind of thoughts, and I don't have a serial killer. Yeah, sure. And I imagine had I found out, I would look at that situation differently. So working on Ghost Adventures for the last 12 years, we've done a lot of prisons, right? We've investigated a lot of prisons. I've interviewed a lot of prison guards, correction officers, wardens. And I remember speaking with a corrections officer who said, you know, there's really two kinds of prisoners in here. So he's like, some of these guys in another world would be friends, would go fishing, would hang out, whatever. He's like, because you realize that the difference between me, meaning the corrections officer, and the prisoner is that like 30 seconds. That's the difference between the two of us. And in a 30-second period of time, they made a decision, a choice, a horrible mistake, and have to pay for it. Now they're in jail. And all of us, right, have been faced with, we could have made a horrible choice or decision, and we didn't. We kept those feelings at bay, or we calmed ourselves down, whatever it is. Then he also said, some people in here, they were born evil. And if they're not in here, they're going to hurt people. Like they have to stay in here, or they were just born bad. But he said, that's not the majority. The majority is someone who made a mistake, someone who snapped at the wrong moment. And God, I got to imagine you think about that. Like someone cuts you off in traffic. Are you like, don't you know who I am? Ugh, right?
Yeah, I do that. actually not. But I love your explanation because, and it's quite different than Holmes was. He was the most conniving, evil genius that probably ever lived. I don't think even anyone would argue, any historians would argue that with me. He planned ahead. There was a man with 3 wives at one time. All right.
Right.
This was a man who, when they were his last few days as a free man, Jeff, he was traveling from Texas through Indianapolis, through Chicago, Toronto, and then finally Boston. He had 3 parties with him. Okay. 2 wives, children in the third. None of them knew they were together. And he managed all 3 of those on a trip across America. Oof. And murdered the kids on separate locations at different places. And then had the 2 women, when he was finally arrested in Boston, cry tears that they didn't have the man they loved any longer.
Sandra,
there's never been anyone like him ever. I mean, it's amazing. You know what, Jeff? I had a Hollywood producer call me the other day, and he was scratching his head saying, you know, none of us here can believe that no one's ever made a movie about this guy yet. He's incredible. And I said, well, you guys someone's got to step up to the plate and hit it out of the park. Yeah.
So Sandra once says, 3 wives. When did he have time to murder people? That's a solid question, Sandra.
That's a good question.
Sure. Tracy, good point too. When I was in middle school, our 8th grade teacher said that everyone was capable of murder and would face that choice at least once in their lives. I would disagree with you, Tracy, right up until I became a father. And now post being a father, and happy almost Father's Day, everyone out there. Now that I'm a dad, yep, darn right I could kill someone. Before I had my daughter, I'd be like, no, I could never kill anybody. And maybe I couldn't. But now, oh yeah, faced with the right circumstances, hell yeah, I could. And not even apologize for it, right? If like your family's in danger and it's about protecting them, sure. You know, I get it. But I also get that. So Holmes, to kill that many people, like you have to be smart. That's not snapping. That's not flying off the handle. Those people get caught. That's sloppy, right? That's messy. That's moment of rage and passion, and you don't care who's looking. If you're going to kill people and not get caught, that's premeditated. That's planning. And like you said, that's a special kind of evil. Especially when you don't have a connection necessarily with the victims, when you're not even mad at them, you just want to do it. God.
It usually has to do with money. He usually murdered as that was the purpose and plan behind a life insurance fraud.
Right.
That's how he made a living, and he made a great living. He was a very wealthy man back then. But you know, when you have Black's Law Dictionary and it has premeditated murder, in my opinion, they should have a picture of the murder castle. The man built this in preparation for the World's Fair so that he could murder. That's premeditated in its most ultimate form.
Right. I mean, there was secret passageways. There was, I mean, he built in devices to help him get bodies out without being seen. Yeah, that's a premeditated architect of murder. Yeah, there was a good question here. Brianna wants to know, how did he get the name Holmes? How did he go from Mudgett to Holmes?
He was fascinated with Sherlock Holmes.
That was
And
it.
he had almost, I think there was a historian in Chicago who did some research on it once, that Holmes had over 41 different aliases. But Holmes was his favorite, H.H. Holmes.
So I know now that the murder castle is long gone. However, in Chicago today, it's a post office, right?
Yes.
And you've been in there. They allowed you in, right? I remember years ago you telling me twice you've been in. And not just in to like mail a letter. I mean, they let you down in the basement. What did it feel like to be down there?
You know, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring it up on your show.
Yeah.
If you ever get permission to go down with Zach and the guys and me, you've got probably the most, you'll set records for viewership on that show. Because, you know, that last American Ripper we had over 1.6 million viewers.
Huh.
And I know a show with Zach and I and the guys down in the post office basement, you'd have 3 or 4 million people watching.
We tried. I mean, for anyone watching, like I've made that phone call myself. It's a post office. It's, you know, the red tape to get through. It's not like a private business where you just say, hey, can we do this? And they allow it. I mean, that's got to go to literally Washington, D.C.
Let's go do it together one day and try.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried before. You never know. Times are getting tough for the Postal Service. Maybe they could use that location fee, you know? Like, it ain't much, folks, but, you know, I guess it's a few letters anyway.
Yeah, I went down, Kim, my buddy Kim and I talked the Postmaster General there into letting us go down into the basement when it had been barricaded for years. And that was very, very spooky. I write about it in the book. Then they let me go. Susan Marquardt, she in Chicago, she obtained permission for us to go down on History Channel with Haunted History, and the whole team and I went down. It was quite a different experience, though. That first time I went down, there was an energy there that I could literally feel, and I was never a paranormalist. Okay. I could feel it, and it was trying to get me to kill my best friend. So you talked about earlier about those feelings earlier in life, right?
Yeah.
When I went down with history, the post office had cleaned the whole building up. We had 30 or 40 guys with us, with film crews and audio teams and directors and producers wanted to go, and we didn't feel anything. But I got a feeling that if we got a chance to go down, Zach and I, it might be amazing.
Yeah, we'll try again. We'll try. I mean, you know, I never give up. I just, you know, sometimes and the thing is that the people that make those decisions change jobs, and someone else comes in, and you know, you just keep trying.
Your volume's not good again, Jeff. All of a sudden, I can hear you, but barely.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what changed. You got quiet too, but then you sound clear again now. So we'll just do our best. We'll do our best to get through this. Tell me about young Jeff Mudgett. Where did you grow up? Take a drink first. Yeah, cheers.
My father was a Navy jet pilot, so we moved around a lot, but mostly San Diego, the San Diego area, the island in the middle of San Diego Bay, Coronado.
Yeah.
So I had a great high school experience. The beach every morning. You know, I used to jog the beach every morning and then go beach combing. I used to go hang out where the Navy SEALs used to train.
Right.
And they'd lose their fins and masts, and I'd go grab the Navy SEAL masts and fins, you know, and then we'd have garage sales, you know, instead of a paper route. That's what I do for extra money. But
not bad.
Coronado was a great place to grow up, and I owe a lot to my mom and dad.
Yeah, well, San Diego is beautiful. I mean, the weather's perfect all the time, and you know, there's that. Yeah, no, really cool. Now I know you've been to New Hampshire too. You went to see the birthplace at one point, right?
Oh yeah, I've been 2 or 3 times. I've
Yep.
been in the house where Holmes grew up. I've been in his bedroom. I've been in the church he attended and the building where he taught elementary school. Now, that to me, the whole story, you can go anywhere you want with the Holmes story. Imagine this evil little bastard teaching elementary school.
Well, I can think of a couple teachers I had in elementary school. Maybe it's not that much of a stretch, just a
Yeah.
couple. So attended church. What church did he go to? What team did he
It's
play
still
for?
there. I mean, I've got a picture for it. I mean, I'll send it to you after the show, and you can show all your viewers if they want to take a look at it. But it's still a beautiful little church. But it's let's see, it's at least 200 years old now.
And what kind of church was it? Baptist, Congregationalist?
Protestant, I think. But you know what? I wouldn't want to bet serious money. I might have that wrong. I'd have to do some research.
No problem. No problem. I was just curious. Like,
one of your viewers might jump in here with a comment on what church
someone will Google it right now. They'll pop in somewhere and just be like, "Here's the thing." So yeah, someone's gonna say that. Oh yeah, John Gately said, and I heard this too. Leonardo DiCaprio doing Devil in the White City. Did that ever happen or no?
You know, the first A-list actor who bought the story was Tom Cruise.
Okay.
Then he sold it to DiCaprio and Scorsese, and DiCaprio is on record stating that this was the role of his lifetime.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they backed out, and they gave it to Paramount, who gave it to Hulu, who supposedly is making a series right now, The Devil in the White City, which is coming out, I guess, within the next 6 months. But as far as a major motion picture, I've got some guys working with me that are interested in the book, and they're interested in making a movie, not a mini series.
Yeah,
which excites me. I've always wanted a movie about it with a Johnny Depp or somebody like that playing Holmes. Yeah.
God, right. Yeah, he was Sweeney Todd. It's not that far of a stretch for Johnny Depp, right? I mean, God, Sweeney Todd. We just watched that not that long ago. My daughter's been into Johnny Depp movies and she loves horror. And Sweeney Todd, good God. We just got to make H.H. Holmes into a musical, right? And you're there. No, probably not a musical. Yeah. Nope, I get it. So what else? I mean, so what else about your life now that you've become like this H.H. Holmes guy, right? You said you had a whole other career, a whole other life, and now you're this, right? Or are you this too? I mean, is this taken over?
Yeah, it's we all think back about the decisions we made in life, and whether this was a wise move or not, I don't know. It's given me the opportunity to meet a lot of people in my life, and I got to tell you that the 9 months I spent in production on American Ripper were some of the most fun of my entire existence. Amaryllis, my co-host, and I got to be best friends. We still talk all the time. She's a Kennedy now. She's got a best-selling book. She's got a TV show coming out pretty soon. About her time in the CIA. She was a Rambo type CIA operative in the Middle East.
That's so crazy.
Her story is going to be incredible.
What happens when a TV show gets involved, right? Like, this is the work you've been doing for your book and for your lectures and stuff like that. What changes? What changes when now there's a production company and now there's no take two? You got to walk in the building again. And does it feel different? Does it feel forced when you're working on that?
Jeff, I think you know the answer to this question, but I'll help you out here.
Yeah.
But I had problems with the director.
Okay.
I had issues with history, and and you know what? You can understand why. Their interest was in making a television series which was a success. My interest was in telling the world what happened. And there were times when those two interests didn't match. And it was frustrating. And at the end of the show, I got left out of a lot of decisions that I would have liked to have been a part of. And but I would imagine that happens quite often with actors, hosts, or whatever you want to call what I was.
Yeah.
And it's and the guys spending the money, and they were spending a lot of money. We spent, Jeff, when we did the exhumation at the end, They had a budget, I'd say of probably $100,000. We
Sure.
ended up spending $1 million,
Ooh,
and there were people in trouble over that.
I'm sure.
And I can understand why.
Yeah.
There's people writing checks left and right, and at the end, they instead of realizing they had an incredible second season on their hands, had they wanted, they just wanted out.
Yeah. It's funny how it works, right? You said the numbers were good, the ratings are good. I don't even pretend to know how TV networks think, right? I've been around them. I've worked with different shows and stuff like that. Sometimes someone literally gets fired, someone else gets hired and goes, "Oh, I don't want to do any of that." That's the end of it, right? It has nothing to do with anything else. But it's I don't know. To me, these stories stick around because it's a lesson we haven't learned. Obviously, there have been other serial killers since Holmes. There will be more in the future. It's not done, right? And so the more we can learn about them, the more we can kind of profile or maybe, start to see them on the horizon. I had a really interesting conversation when we were working on the Ghost Adventures serial killer miniseries. You were part of the H.H. Holmes episode, and
which I really enjoyed being a part of.
Yeah, no, and thanks for doing that. And that was you went to the Indianapolis house, right? That was where we had you out. So I spoke to a guy. We didn't get him on camera because we went in a slightly different direction. Again, some of these decisions are not mine. He wrote a book about black serial killers. And he's a black man, author, and he said he believes that this is really the ultimate form of racism. And I said, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he's like, everyone says serial killers are men. They're male. They're white, and they're age what, late 20s to early 40s, right? Like that's the general profile. And he said, there's plenty of black serial killers. Serial killers usually by design hunt their own, right? So white people are going to hunt white people. They're going to go into neighborhoods where they blend in, where they don't stick out. They're not going to go into black neighborhoods. They're not going to go into ethnic neighborhoods that aren't theirs. They know how to hunt. They know how to hunt without being seen. And why would any culture be immune from this? And so he basically profiled all these black serial killers that I'd never heard of. And I realized, what a strange narrative, right? We do leave that out of the equation. There are black serial killers. There are Hispanic serial killers. There's Asian serial killers. And we only talk about the white, good-looking guys, right? The H.H. Holmes and the, well, not Son of Sam wasn't a pretty man, but you know what I mean? We talk about these white men. And then it made me think, good God, we're leaving out part of the story. I don't know. I have you looked into other serial killers? Or have you just basically focused on Holmes?
Oh, sure. And the standard names, the Bundys, the Gacy's, those names.
Sorry, Ramirez, another
but
one.
You're right. I couldn't give you a black serial killer right now, and I'm sure there's been those.
Yep.
Probably because Hollywood's never wanted to make a movie of a black serial killer. But I can tell you this. I doubt Holmes ever killed an African American.
No.
All white. Yeah.
Ted Bundy. Look at Ted Bundy's victim list, right? I mean, they were attractive people because he could approach them and not seem. God, there was the one episode we worked on for Ghost Adventures. He went up to a girl. He would have a fake cast on his hand and say, "I'm sorry, can you just open my car door for me? It's right out here in the parking lot." Just and of course you're just like, oh, you're just an injured man who needs help. Yes, I will go with you to your car and open the car door for you. And then boom, it's too late. Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. We know all these white guys, and their stories get made into movies and miniseries and everything else. And the reality is there are people that are so broken that they're going to hunt others and hunt their own, right? That's what this is about. That's what serial killers do. And it's scary. It's scary because you could say, of course I wouldn't go with a stranger to his car in a parking lot. You say that until a guy in a cast says, can you please just help open the car door for me? And then you're gone, God. So
Holmes was different in that he would select a couple. He would seduce the wife right out of the middle of the relationship. He would the husband would go missing, which is another reason, a lot of the Holmes historians want to argue how many he killed when everywhere you turn, someone went missing around Holmes, which coincidentally
since he was a serial killer and that evil, there probably is some indication of foul play.
Right.
And then once that man would go missing, the life insurance policy would be modified to list Holmes as the beneficiary. And then, whammo, someone would die accidentally or herself go missing, and then he'd collect the fees. And then finally, Jeff, the insurance company just had enough, and they hired some of the best detectives in America to stop this stuff, and they tracked Holmes down across the entire country. You know, we talk about Bonnie and Clyde, you know, as this police chase across America. It wasn't even close to the one that the insurance company detectives set off on after Holmes across the entire country.
And think about it. You can kill people, and that's one thing. It's not good, but you know, you have your reasons. But once money starts going missing, that's when it gets serious.
New England money, insurance
That's right.
company money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Hartford, right? Hartford, Connecticut, and like, once the money goes, once there's money on the table, now people are taking it personally. You can kill my grandma, but if you start taking the money, now we got a problem.
There's a lot to that.
And
I hate to say that, but
it's true.
Let's be honest about it.
Yeah,
and that's good. That's good. Had they not finally put their foot down, we've had enough. He might have been continuing on for decades.
Oh, it is something. Heidi wants to know. She's Canadian. Good day. The Canadian connection to Holmes. He got up into Ontario, right? Like he got up into Canada a bit before coming back down to Indianapolis. Toronto, right? So
he murdered the two Pikesville girls in Toronto, and the Canadians. That's one of the Holmes murder trial, Jeff, is one of the most complex exercises in jurisdiction maybe in American history. You know, he fired his lawyers, he conducted his own defense. He started getting worried about there being a mistrial and the judge sentencing him to life in prison instead of death, which Holmes wanted for reasons we can go into later. But, you know, that's why when the decision came down in Philadelphia, he decidedly wanted there to be a final. And if there had been a not guilty, and I'm getting off point here a little bit, but if there had been a not guilty, Toronto and the Canadians were waiting to have their own murder trial with Holmes. Yeah. So he wasn't getting out of any going to prison, but he had quite a macabre, complex plan that it's hard for me to prove because you're dealing with this man's complex mind. You're dealing with his conversations with him and his lawyers, which of course were, you know, confidential. And there were no diaries or writings about what actually happened and why he fired his lawyers, why he hired him back. And what people don't realize, Jeff, is when the papers are writing about when Holmes was conducting his own defense, he was actually questioning one of his wives, which the judge allowed because he was a bigamist, which is a fascinating issue in itself. But Holmes would go outside, the bailiffs would follow him out so he could converse with the lawyers he had fired, and they would give him advice when he'd come back into the courtroom and give the proper questions regarding each witness. It was an amazing story.
So a lot of serial killers, their MO, especially near the end, they start to get sloppy. And some people often speculate they get sloppy because they want to get caught. They know what they're doing is horribly wrong. Please, oh, please catch me and put an end to this. Do you think that's why he wanted death? Because he knew he would just keep killing if he ever got out?
No. He had probably 4 or 5 different jurisdictions waiting their turn in case there was a not guilty or a innocent by reason of the jury, hung jury.
Right.
So Holmes knew that in order for him to have his blank check, Jeff, in order for him to go on with life, he had to be found guilty. He had to be sentenced to death. It had to be in Philadelphia. He had to be incarcerated at Moyamensing prison so that he could commence his plans for his escape.
Wow. And
That's like it's unique in American history.
yeah,
And I work. You've seen my Facebook page. I work on it every day. I've got a team of researchers, 4 or 5, that help me try to come up with something new that we post a lot. And
yeah.
if any of your viewers hang in there on Bloodstains Facebook page,
Yep.
because we have one today about the handwriting for comparing his with the Dear Boss letter, the famous Jack the Ripper letter.
So yeah,
And,
there's and you can find links on Jeff's website, which is right there, bloodstainsthebook.com. There's links to his Facebook group, so you can click on that.
Well, that's where you can buy a copy of my book. But the Bloodstains Facebook page is where we release a lot of new information that my research team comes up with quite often. We're working now on Holmes having been seen in California after the execution. I'll give you something that I haven't released on any other show yet. We have a picture of my grandfather and his brother at a ceremony in 1960 California, outside of San Diego, for the burial of a man named H.H. Herbst.
Huh.
And we're tracking that down like hound dogs after a fox right now. You can imagine we're excited about what that's going to come up with.
So you think Holmes didn't die when everyone else thought he
didn't?
Huh.
He didn't. You remember the end of American Ripper, that final episode? People were being fired left and right on the show. The director was fired. One of the producers was fired. The show was a mess at the end. And when it finally came out, the DNA didn't match mine from the exhumed remains. There were no dental records that the University of Pennsylvania represented. There were dental observations from a cadaver, not the living inmate that they stated they were from. The University of Pennsylvania anthropologists, who were some of the greatest in the world, admitted that the skeleton we dug up was too short to have been Holmes, but history didn't put that on the air. And then they also admitted that there was no cause of death from hanging on the cervical of the neck. And to tell you the truth, Jeff, I don't quite understand why those evidentiary items haven't been taken up and run with someone like history, someone like the BBC, someone interested in having the truth be told. And one day it will. But when the DNA doesn't match mine, someone's got to step forward and say, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
Huh.
And the DNA was tested by King's College in London, the greatest DNA institute in the world.
And I mean, DNA testing is pretty straightforward these days. I mean, it's not rocket science anymore. I mean,
They take DNA, Jeff, from the remains from the pyramids in Egypt. Okay, when we dug this thing up, his remains were perfect. It was perfect.
Wow.
You've seen pictures of the skull and the teeth; they're perfect.
Yeah.
When you have an intact molar, they can get DNA from that.
Sure.
There's no doubt about it. And they had my father and I given blood. There's no doubt about what should have come up had it been H.H. Holmes.
That's Sue brings up a point. Do you think someone could have stolen the body and replaced it with a medical cadaver for some macabre reason, or do you think
it was a substitute? That was part of his plan. That was what he made a lot of money over his lifetime, Jeff, substituting corpses in graves and then claiming the life insurance, the proceeds in a fraud.
Right.
He was the master at it. And he did it at Moyamensing Prison and Holy Cross Cemetery, where we had the exhumation on American Ripper. Except you had such a group of scientists, network executives, you had such a group that because the teeth matched what was buried. See, and I kept trying to explain to him, Jeff, all is happening here is what we're digging up. The teeth are matching what was buried, but that's not proving it was H.H. Holmes. That's the substituted cadaver.
Right.
And they all thought I was part of some conspiracy theory, Jeff. They all thought I was a little off loop, which, you've known me 15 years. There's times when I'm off loop.
Totally.
And for them to go out on that out on the edge and to have stated, hey, everyone, this isn't working. This DNA isn't matching, Jess. This skeleton's too short. When some of the greatest anthropologists in the world admit that the skeleton we dug up was too short and that it was impossible. They told me off camera, Jeff, it was impossible for it to have been H.H. Holmes.
So, I mean, what scheme could you be involved in? He's not alive anymore, no matter what, right? I mean, what would you gain at this point?
I don't know. They could have had a great second season, my friend. They could have just rocked with it. Like I said, they had 1.6 million people in America alone. The show was even more popular in the UK.
Yeah, they love serial
season, it would have just it would have been just rolling. And I just still don't know why they walked away from it.
Nah, I don't pretend to know how TV networks think, but we're fortunate that we live in a time when you can get your story out anyway. You've got your book, you've got social media, Facebook, you can produce your own videos, and that's an interesting time that we live in. That's so different from 20 years ago when if you couldn't get it on TV, if you couldn't get like an independent film or something, then that was that. I also think it's why our society's in so much trouble, because anybody with a video camera can put out any kind of crazy theory and idea. People share it, and next thing you know, right? It's a viral idea.
You know what, Jeff? You know what I love about it is I have nothing to do with the DNA not matching. I have nothing to do with there not being dental records. I have nothing to do with the skeleton being too short. It's not like, something I made up about the Kennedy assassination or something like this. These are all pieces of evidence that were obtained by some of the greatest scientists in the world. And you go to the University of Pennsylvania Anthropology and Archaeology Museum, my friend, one day. You walk through these halls, and there's some of the most incredible discoveries. It looks like National Treasure, or what was that movie with Harrison Ford, Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh yeah, right.
You're seeing stuff like that going through this hallway, to where we have the remains we dug up on this gantry table, and these incredible archaeologists they've got their headphones on and they're taking orders from King's College in London, the most esteemed DNA testing lab in the world. And I'm just sitting there with my jaw open. Amaryllis is saying, man, I've never saw anything like this at the CIA. And we're taking samples, and they're explaining exactly where they want the sample taken for their test. And they're drilling in this pocket at the back of the skull where this powder is perfect DNA. And then when it comes back and it doesn't match, they run away from it. And I still don't understand why.
So from the DNA, could they tell like ethnicity of this person? Could they draw any conclusions and say, oh, wait a minute?
You know what they wanted to say, Jeff? You know what they wanted to say? They ran with? When we went into the lab, and this was a mistake on my part, and it's, the scene in Hamlet where the son holds the father's skull in his hand and he talks, how could you have done this to me?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I had this thought in my head this whole time we were in Philadelphia while the labs were working. We had lab scientists all over the place. It was amazing. And history was spending money left and right. They were doing a great job. So I went down into the lab before all the film crews were there, and I grabbed the skull in my hand and I lifted him up and I looked into his eyes, those pockets. And I still had, there was about 50-50 shot that I thought, this was really Holmes. This was my great-great-grandfather, okay? Because I didn't have the DNA. I didn't have the dental records. I didn't have anything back by then. So I lifted it up and I'm talking to him. They come in the lab and they start screaming and yelling at me that and that I've contaminated the DNA and all this stuff. So they get the scientists from King's College on the air, and the King's Collegists, they said, don't worry. We're going to wipe the back of the skull off where his hand touched the skull. Plus, we're not going to use that anyway. We're going to go into a pocket at the back of the head anyway. So, that's what they eventually fell back on, that me holding the skull in my hand contaminated the DNA to where a true result and comparison couldn't be made. So, I don't know.
God, I don't know either. So where is he? Do you have a guess?
No, he had to be put back. The judge was adamant.
No, I don't mean
the judge was incredible. He said, I'm going to let you do this.
Yeah.
For history's sake, I'm going to let you do this. But I want everything put back the way it was, except for the concrete sarcophagus, the fake coffin we found next to the grave. We actually found a fake coffin that Holmes is part of his plan. We haven't figured out what he was using it for, but there was a fake coffin. So the judge said, put everything back, bury him, leave him alone. And so the University of Pennsylvania, they put him back, everything back. They said. Now I have sources that say that a couple of the teeth were kept, which I'd love one day to have them retested and another DNA comparison made.
Huh? Like I'm gonna check eBay because who knows? They could be up there right now. Hey, did you see?
Might be in their little museum there. Yeah.
Yeah. God, you never know. Lauren wants to know, did you see the American Horror Story hotel season? Did you catch that? Fiction?
No.
Okay. Great show on AMC, fictional show, but just curious about their portrayal. But if you didn't see it, you don't know, and that's okay. Yeah, lots of folks in here wanted to see a second season, but that's how it goes. Yeah, and Sue made a good point, too. If you contaminated it with your own DNA, then that should have been a match, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. Very good, Sue. Very good.
Sorry, John corrected me. American Horror Stories on FX, not AMC. Thank you, John. This is what's great, right? We've got help. We got help with this. You're right, John. Yeah, very cool. So what are you doing for fun now that Vegas is reopening? I know you're a gambler.
Yeah, I like to gamble. I like to got a couple of friends. We go down to some of the shows. They're not opening the shows yet for some of the actors and the Cher used to hang out and those kind of stuff. And I used to get some good prices on tickets, and so that hasn't started up yet. So I'm missing that. But once that starts up, I like going down and seeing some of the celebrities. I tell you what, once I saw. Oh God, who was the gal that sang Titanic?
Oh, the girl was Celine Dion.
The lady, Celine Dion. I saw her live sing Titanic. That kind of stuff. I love doing stuff like that. And when you're not paying $2,000 a ticket, you can afford to do it. So I try to keep my eye open on who's ever coming around, like Def Leppard or any of the great concerts, those kind of things.
Yeah. What's quarantine life been like for you? Like getting locked in? I mean, did you work on anything?
I couldn't talk about my favorite.
You couldn't what?
You told me I couldn't talk about my favorite.
Yes, you can.
Football.
Go ahead. Do it.
I like Tom
Talk
Brady.
about Tom Brady. Just say it. Go ahead.
I like Tom Brady. I want to see how he does in Tampa.
He's nothing without Belichick. It's a team. I don't think either one of them are going to be okay without the other. That's my prediction.
He needed his tight end last year. That was sure. That was for sure.
His tight end's not going to play in Tampa. That I promise you. Gronk has been drafted by the Tampa Bay Bucks. He's lost like 50 pounds since he started playing.
Really?
He was made of glass to begin with. I don't see him taking too many hits in the new season. But what do I know? I mean, stranger things.
Who's the new quarterback for the Pats?
Stillman. Like he's a rookie, but apparently they have a lot of faith in him. Tom Brady was nobody when he took over. So we'll see. We'll see. And Las Vegas is getting a football team. You're getting the Raiders.
Oh my God, we got the Raiders. We're the Raiders now, and you should see our new stadium. It's the most incredible structure in the NFL. It's awesome. I can't wait to see a game at it.
I'm sure it is, but you still have the Raiders. Sorry.
Tell me, Jeff, what's going to happen when teams fly into Las Vegas for a game on Sunday.
So
are they going to let their players go down to the Strip? Are they?
No, definitely not. But the weirdest thing is I think everybody's sort of agreeing that you're going to see sports soonish. You're going to start seeing professional sports, but there won't be people in the stands, which is going to be that's going to be weird.
I don't want to watch football like that.
No, it's like that's the roar of the crowd when, whatever, either direction. And that's going to be really strange for me and artificial. And man, I think right now we need something real. And sports is, I appreciate sports, and I know people are out there passionate about their sports, whatever it is you like. And seeing it would give you a little bit of normalcy, and we need normalcy so bad right now. But they're talking about like piping in artificial noise, like the Falcons do. Anyway, they got busted for that. For those of you who don't follow football, they got busted for actually piping in crowd noise to make it loud for the opposing team. So anyway, everybody's looking for.
I was gambling the other day, and I was sitting next to a fellow whose company is actually part of the construction, and he was in charge of the inflatable roof.
Yeah.
And he was explaining to me they're having a lot of troubles finishing that part of the job off.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you play blackjack?
No, not anymore. I used to.
All right, I'm going to deal you. I'm going to deal you in. Hold on. There's your card, dealer's card. This is what you got. Oh, 7 and 2. What do you want to do?
Hit me.
By the way, I'm showing a 3, dealer. All right, hitting you. Oh, 17. What you want to do?
That's good. I'll hold.
You'll hold. 13. Got to take a hit on that. Sorry. 21.
21.
Unfortunate for you.
Jeff, I should have known.
Yeah, and that wasn't even fixed.
What do I owe you?
Oh, yeah, right. Another beer. Next time I see you.
All right,
Another
you got
beer.
it. I'll do it in Michigan.
In Michigan. I miss it. I miss being able to hang out with friends. I miss being able to go do these things with you and seeing folks. And you think about like all the hugs that go down at these conferences. That's gonna be weird, right? When can we hug again?
You know, when I go to the Michigan, I take like one box of books, okay, because I want to get them so quick. Because then I want to go to the bar and hang out with all my old friends. I don't want to sit on one of those tables. I want to go to the bar and then want to have some of the attendees, the ladies come up and, you dance? Oh yeah, I dance. I remember you dancing. You're out there dancing too in Schrader, we're having a blast. Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, but like the hugging and the handshakes and the arms around each other.
What are we gonna do?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what that's gonna look like. It's weird, right? Like, so I had to go to Home Depot today because I'm working on a project, and everybody has a mask on because you have to. It's required. Like they won't even let you in the store without it. And the strangest thing to me, it occurred to me today, is that it's looking normal now for me. Like, I know I've been there enough to be like, okay, my mask is on, your mask is on. I can't see if you're smiling at me or frowning at me or whatever. So it's sort of like this weird understood thing, and you give people a little more space than you used to. Like, you'd bump into someone, oh, I need that, sorry, but now we're sort of like giving some space, and I wonder how we kind of go back from that. Like, how do we feel safe to be like, hello, person, I don't know where you've been, give me a hug, right?
Oh, remember the old Michigan shows? We used to shake hands with 1,000 people every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. And now, like, and it's awkward because it feels rude. The way I was raised, like, you look someone in the eye, you shake their hand, and you give them a firm handshake, and that's what an adult does. And to be like, hey, nice to meet you, right? Like, that's weird. I don't know how long we have to do that, but I guess someone will tell us along the way, right?
Let's hope we got a vaccine before the next show.
That would be great. Something where we could all just go get a shot and be like, all right, 2 weeks from now, we're back to normal. Yeah. That would be wonderful. But the reality too is that, right, like, plagues have happened before. They will happen again. This is the one we're dealing with.
I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal this, but I'm going to be part of a team or a list of I don't know what you'd call us, but there's 4 or 5 of us up on stage, and we're going to be discussing serial killing in America.
Ooh!
At the next Michigan Paracon, so I'm looking forward to that. And they made sure they had me up on stage, so I'm looking forward. I'll have to do my homework before the next show.
That'll be very cool. And because there's obviously a ton of similarities between serial killers, and there's obviously a ton of differences. The way they do things and their MOs and things like that. God, Ghost Adventures. We worked on one in California. What was that woman? She would bury them in her own yard. Who?
Zodiac?
No, not the Zodiac killer. It was this woman would take in boarders. She had a boarding house. She would collect their monthly checks and then kill them. And the checks would keep coming, and then she'd rent out their room again to someone else, and she would bury them all right in her yard, right in like I think it was San Francisco.
Wow.
Someone help me. You're Googling now.
How can I not have heard of that?
It's a woman, which makes it a little bit different, right? There's not a lot of, there's a few, but there's not as many female serial killers. Oh, please, someone post it. Come on, help me. Tim, John, you guys are usually good on the Google. Get on that. We did an episode of Ghost Adventures. Although, to be fair, like we've done over 200, I cannot remember them all. But anyway, it's one of those crazy stories. And we did 2 serial killer stories. Another guy in Indiana, he also buried his victims in the yard. And that sounds insane to us normal people. But yet at the same time, that's what serial killers do, right? Like you keep them close and no one would think to look there. No one's sane. Dorothy, Sacramento.
You know, Jeff, we have to work together. We've got to get the post office to give us permission to go back down in that basement with Ghost Adventures. Can you imagine if we got down there and that energy started wanting me to kill Zach while we were down there and you guys had it on film? Oh, what a show that would be.
Yeah, Beth got it for me. Thank
you.
I
don't do it. Make sure
Dorotheo.
You know what? That's one of the great surprises I had, because there's so many stories and rumors about Zach, you know? And when I went and did the show, we had a great time together. I liked him a lot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The rest of the team were awesome. They were so friendly. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Yeah, thank you. That was last time was Indianapolis where we had you there, right?
Yeah. We saw the little furnace where Holmes stuffed the little boy in.
I know.
Or the spot where he stuffed the little boy in, and then I explained how he walked off to have his knives sharpened for the next day's murder. Oh, God.
So horrible. So horrible, especially with kids. My God. Like I can't, again, being a dad,
8-year-old.
I can't handle killing a kid. I don't understand it. It doesn't compute at all.
Well, I think that's where the word psychopath is accurate. I mean, there was no empathy at all. He's a machine.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Right. That's a complete detachment from your fellow man, right? That you can look at another human being and see meat, like just doesn't matter. And I can't imagine that's a good way to live. I can't imagine that's a happy life. Right.
No, I hope not. It wasn't happy. It was, although it could have been whatever he wanted to be, Jeff. He was that smart. I mean, we had stories periodically come up about how he'd go during his time at the University of Michigan Medical School, how he would skip classes and then show up on the day of an exam and get his C+ and move on to the next class, having never attended a class. And some historians want to say, see, he wasn't that smart. Where I look at that, no. That was a man who showed up and passed the exam despite having never gone to the class. That was very smart. And it was definitely unique. And he could have been a Louis Pasteur had he wanted to be. He could have created a drug or a vaccine. And instead, he decided he liked the playing with things, that last moment, seeing them struggle and beg, those torture items that I guess some human beings crave, and he certainly did.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. Jeff, I'm out of beer and it's been an hour. I mean, what are we going to do?
I had a great time, my friend. I hope your viewers weren't disappointed in my attendance, okay?
No. Thank you for doing this, buddy. Good to talk to you again. Good to see you again. And, don't be a stranger. We'll get through this. We'll keep doing these things. We'll get there in front of people again one day. And I miss it. I miss it so bad. I miss being in front of real live human beings. I know you guys are real and live, but I want to see your faces too, right? I want to see you looking back. That's such a huge part of this experience. And it's missing right now, but we'll do what we got to do.
I'll tell you what, let's get down in that basement, my friend.
We'll call again. We'll definitely make a call again because it's been a few years since
Yeah.
we tried, and I'm totally willing to try again. So good stuff. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for being out there. Try to be kind to one another, right? Let's try a little harder out there and look out for each other and spread the word. Do good things. Don't be a serial killer. And thank you, Jeff Mudgett. All right, folks. Till next time.
The motion.
Yeah. All right. Till next time, guys. Take it easy.